The Antarctica energy wave mystery. It began as an ordinary day in orbit. High above the Pacific, the Himawari 9 satellite, Japan's most advanced eye in the sky, was performing its routine duty, scanning the swirling clouds, the drifting air masses, the invisible rivers of pressure that shaped our weather. For years, it had been the silent witness to storms, typhoons, and shifting climate patterns. Nothing escaped its lenses, until the day something happened that no satellite had ever seen before. In what many scientists later called one of the strangest meteorological events in recorded history, the Japan Meteorological Agency announced a sudden and unexplained communication failure with Himawari 9. Data feed was lost, signals scrambled, and the satellite, a 300 million masterpiece of modern engineering, went silent. But what made the event extraordinary wasn't the technical failure itself. It was what appeared moments before that silence fell. Before contact vanished, the satellite transmitted a brief sequence of images, a series of frames that would ignite a storm of speculation across the scientific community and the public alike. In those final seconds, the world saw something impossible: massive wave, like arcs of energy rippling outward from the frozen heart of Antarctica, stretching thousands of miles across the southern hemisphere toward Australia. These were not clouds, not storms, not anything meteorologists could recognize. They were perfect concentric rings, bands of light and shadow across the atmosphere, vast enough to cover entire continents. According to early estimates, the ripples spanned over 6,000 miles, visible as if the planet itself had shuddered and sent a pulse through the air. When the first images appeared online, most dismissed them as data glitches or optical distortions. But soon, independent analysts began to compare timestamps, radar overlays, and geospatial readings from other satellites. What they found defied easy dismissal. The pattern was real, the formation was consistent, and the scale beyond comprehension. Inside the Japan Meteorological Agency's control room, engineers scrambled to re-establish contact. Himawari 9, a state-of-the-art geostationary satellite designed to capture ultra-high-resolution images every 10 minutes, had never failed in this way. Its systems monitored everything from sea surface temperatures to ultraviolet radiation. It was built to withstand solar flares, cosmic interference, and even micro-meteorite impacts. Yet here it was offline, just seconds after witnessing what looked like an atmospheric explosion of energy. What could create such an effect? That question still haunts the people who studied the images. In the frames that survived, the patterns were eerily symmetrical, rings expanding from a central point deep within Antarctica, rippling northward as if from an unseen detonation. Each wave formed and expanded within minutes, crossing the Indian Ocean and reaching the outskirts of mainland Australia. To scientists, the geometry was too perfect. Nature, for all its beauty, rarely draws straight lines or flawless circles on a planetary scale. Something organized, something powerful, seemed to have generated the phenomenon. Meteorologists at first tried to reason through the familiar explanations. Could it have been an atmospheric gravity wave caused by temperature inversion? Was it a shockwave from a distant volcanic eruption, or perhaps an artifact of the satellite's imaging process? Interference, a camera fault, a reflection of solar radiation. But one by one, those theories began to crumble. There had been no major storm systems, no volcanic activity, no earthquakes beneath the Antarctic shelf, and crucially, no other satellite in orbit at that time displayed similar distortions. Himawari 9 alone had seen and recorded the event, as Japanese officials released a brief public statement citing a communication anomaly. Scientists around the world began to compare data. At nearly the same moment, the satellite feed went dark. The Australian Bureau of Meteorology registered unexplained disturbances in the upper atmosphere. Fluctuations in pressure and electromagnetic energy unlike anything in recent records. It was as if something massive had pulsed through the air, strong enough to be detected thousands of miles away. The coincidence was impossible to ignore. The same minute the energy waves appeared, Himawari 9 failed. What if the two events were connected? Some researchers privately wondered whether something beneath Antarctica's surface, beneath its miles-thick ice, might have awakened. The continent has long been one of Earth's most secretive frontiers. Buried under 2 miles of ice lie mountains, ancient riverbeds, and geological formations older than civilization itself. In recent decades, satellite-based radar mapping has revealed strange thermal signatures. Hotspots where heat seeps from below the ice, as if from volcanic or even artificial sources. Could one of those sources have erupted, not with fire or lava, but with energy? One hypothesis suggested an electromagnetic discharge similar to a lightning strike on a planetary scale. If some deep, buried process released energy into the atmosphere, it could have created visible shockwaves and possibly interfered with satellite communications. Others speculated about glacial resonance, the idea that shifts in subterranean pressure or tectonic plates beneath the ice might release bursts of compressed air, forming waves across the upper atmosphere. But again, the precision of the circles challenged every natural model. Even more mysterious were the visual details. In the clearest frame, Australia sat beneath a canopy of curved, glowing lines, each arc evenly spaced, alternating between bright and dark, as though an invisible ripple were sweeping through the air. To some analysts, it looked like the signature of a controlled energy burst, the kind seen in simulations of electromagnetic propagation. To others, it resembled ripples in water, expanding outward from a single powerful impact. If it was natural, it was unlike anything previously observed. If it wasn't, then what was it? Meanwhile, engineers at Japan's space agency worked around the clock to diagnose the satellite's silence. Internal reports confirmed that Himawari 9 went offline just minutes after capturing the final anomaly sequence. Attempts to re-establish contact were only partially successful. Some systems rebooted, others remained unresponsive. To this day, no official explanation has been offered for the sudden failure. The timing remains the biggest clue and the biggest enigma. In online communities, the mystery erupted into a global phenomenon. Amateur meteorologists dissected the frames. Analysts produced 3D renderings of the wave pattern. Conspiracy forums lit up with speculation ranging from secret military tests to evidence of something non-human buried beneath the Antarctic ice. Theories multiplied faster than evidence. Yet one fact united them all: the event really happened. The satellite's data existed. The timestamps matched. The wavefronts were captured and verified. And then, nothing. The data feed stopped. The sky went quiet again. To skeptics, the explanation is simple: a rare imaging glitch amplified by coincidence and online hysteria. To believers, it is proof of something extraordinary. A moment when the Earth revealed a force we do not yet understand. But even among professional scientists, unease lingers. Because anomalies like this are not entirely without precedent. There have been other moments, rare, fleeting, when satellites monitoring the Earth's magnetic field or the Sun's radiation have recorded brief, symmetrical patterns moments before losing signal. In each case, the data disappears and the incident fades into rumor. What if these are not coincidences? What if they are glimpses of a deeper mechanism, a pulse in the planet itself? Antarctica has always been a continent wrapped in secrecy. Entire regions remain off limits, protected under international treaties. Beneath its frozen crust, explorers have found massive freshwater lakes sealed for millions of years, unusual magnetic anomalies, and even buried mountain ranges that rival the Alps. In 2018, scientists using radar imaging detected a vast heat source deep under the ice near the Ross Ice Shelf, something producing enough thermal energy to melt ice from below. The possibility that the recent wave patterns originated from this hidden underworld is both fascinating and terrifying. Because if it's true, it would mean that something within the planet, perhaps geological, perhaps not, released a pulse of energy powerful enough to shake the sky and cripple one of humanity's most advanced machines. Some have dared to suggest that it was a test of a new form of energy, a frequency weapon, or a secret research project hidden in the frozen continent. Others whisper of ancient structures buried beneath the ice, awakening after eons of dormancy. Theories without evidence, perhaps, but also without refutation. Because the data is gone, Himawari 9's raw feed from that day is missing, corrupted, or classified. Only fragments remain. In the months that followed, the Japan Meteorological Agency assured the public that operations had been restored, but no new images from the same sector, the region south of the Indian Ocean, have ever been released. Silence now covers the coordinates where the waves once appeared, a silence almost as vast as the continent that spawned them. Whatever occurred over Antarctica that day was not recorded again. But those few surviving frames, shared, copied, analyzed, and preserved by millions, remain one of the most haunting enigmas ever caught on camera. A ripple through the sky, a pulse from the frozen heart of the world, and the sudden blackout of the machine that saw it. Even the skeptics admit one unsettling truth: something happened. Something powerful enough to leave its mark in the air and vanish before anyone could explain it. The forgotten floods. When the Earth rewrote itself, while scientists struggled to decode the mysterious energy waves captured by Himawari 9, a different group of researchers was uncovering evidence of another kind of power. Not invisible, not fleeting, but carved directly into the bones of the Earth itself. Their findings would force us to confront an uncomfortable truth: that the planet has unleashed destruction on a scale so immense it can erase entire civilizations, and that it has done so before. Across frozen valleys and desolate steppes, in places few have ever walked, lie scars that defy modern explanation. Enormous gravel ripples larger than city blocks. Riverbeds gouged into bedrock by forces greater than any known flood. Entire mountain slopes rearranged like sand. To stand before them is to realize how small human history truly is. A flicker compared to the titanic violence that once tore across these landscapes. For decades, mainstream geology taught that change happens slowly: erosion, weathering, and tectonics shaping the planet grain by grain, inch by inch, over millions of years. But a growing body of evidence, ignored for most of the 20th century, tells a different story. A story of sudden, catastrophic transformation. One of the men who helped bring this truth to light was Randall Carlson, a maverick researcher obsessed with cataclysm. His work revisited forgotten geological data, especially the mysterious features of the world's great flood plains. He argued that our planet's history was punctuated, not by slow evolution, but by abrupt, global disasters so immense they rewrote continents and erased memory. And it began with a discovery on the other side of the world. In the early 20th century, an American geologist named J. Harlan Bretz noticed something strange in the Pacific Northwest. He was exploring the Columbia River Basin, a vast desert of carved rock and canyons, when he saw formations that simply didn't fit the story of slow erosion. Giant ripples, some as tall as 6-story buildings, stretched across the landscape. Gigantic dry waterfalls, the size of Niagara, but with no river to feed them, cut through solid basalt. It looked as though a flood the size of an ocean had swept across the land and then vanished. When Bretz presented his findings in the 1920s, the scientific establishment laughed. Floods of that magnitude, they said, were impossible. There was no mechanism that could unleash that much water. But Bretz persisted. He argued that at the end of the last ice age, a massive glacial lake, now known as Glacial Lake Missoula, had formed in Montana, held back by a fragile wall of ice. One day, that wall broke. In hours, hundreds of cubic miles of water, equal to half the volume of Lake Ontario, burst free, tearing through valleys and mountains with unimaginable force. The water moved faster than sound, carrying entire boulders for miles, leaving scars still visible today. For decades, Bretz's impossible flood theory remained a scientific heresy. Then aerial photography, satellite imaging, and further research proved him right. The Missoula floods were real. Multiple ones, in fact. Repeated cataclysms that reshaped an entire region. What was once mocked as myth became accepted geological truth. But the story didn't end there. Because in the 1990s, as the Cold War thawed and old Soviet archives were opened to Western researchers, something startling came to light. Russian geological reports that described another event, one even more violent, even larger, than the Missoula floods. It was known as the Alai Flood, hidden in the mountains of southern Siberia. The Alai Mountains are a cold, remote frontier between the steppes of Central Asia and the glaciers of Siberia. For millennia, they hid a secret beneath their frozen valleys, the remains of an ancient disaster of incomprehensible scale. When Soviet geologists first surveyed the region, they found immense sedimentary bars, ridges of gravel and rock hundreds of feet high, lining the courses of the Chuya and Katun rivers. These formations stretched for miles, dwarfing anything found in normal river systems. The evidence was so overwhelming that even cautious researchers had to admit only a megaflood could have created them. At the end of the last ice age, massive glaciers had sealed off two enormous basins in this region, forming the Choya and Kare lakes. Combined, they held more than 600 cubic kilometers of water, enough to submerge entire countries. Then, as the climate warmed, the ice dams weakened. And one day, they failed. What followed was a cataclysm beyond imagination. The ice barrier gave way, and the lakes emptied in a matter of hours. A wall of water hundreds of feet tall thundered through the valleys, moving faster than any storm wind. Flow rates may have reached 800 million cubic feet per second, many times greater than the entire Amazon River. The torrent ripped soil and stone from mountainsides, carving canyons in its wake. It hurled boulders the size of trucks like pebbles. And when it finally subsided, it left behind a landscape so violently transformed that it became a geological monument to the planet's fury. Even today, you can stand in the Kurit Basin and see the traces. Colossal ripples with crests as high as 18 meters, spaced 200 meters apart. Each ripple marks a moment of chaos frozen in stone. They are the fingerprints of a flood that no human civilization ever witnessed, yet whose echoes still whisper across the earth. To modern geologists, the Alai Flood and the Missoula floods are more than ancient curiosities. They are warnings, proof that the planet is not a calm, stable home, but a volatile system capable of radical change. For people like Randall Carlson, these discoveries connect to a broader and more unsettling idea that global cataclysms occur in cycles, that at the close of the last ice age, around 12,000 to 14,000 years ago, Earth experienced not one, but many such cataclysmic floods across continents. In North America, glaciers collapsed. In Siberia, ice dams shattered. In Europe and the Middle East, seas rose, deltas drowned, and ancient coastlines disappeared. Around the same time, legends from every corner of the world began to speak of a great flood, from the Epic of Gilgamesh in Mesopotamia to the biblical story of Noah, from Hindu texts describing Manu's Ark to the Aztec myth of Nualpili. Ancient civilizations preserved remarkably similar stories, of water swallowing the earth, of gods or stars bringing destruction, of survivors carrying knowledge into the next age. To some, these are myths. To others, they are memories. If the Alai Flood was real, and if floods like it occurred worldwide, then perhaps those myths are not imagination but inheritance, echoes of a time when humanity itself was almost erased. The physical evidence supports the idea. Beneath the mountains and plains, scientists have mapped giant scablands, massive sediment bars, and fossilized river channels that stretch for hundreds of miles. These features cannot be explained by gradual erosion. They demand sudden, immense energy, like a planet-sized wound frozen mid-heal. In some places, the floodwaters left layered deposits hundreds of feet thick, creating new lakes that still exist today. In others, the sheer force of the current rearranged entire ecosystems, wiping out species and reshaping valleys overnight. Geologists studying these scars describe them with a mix of awe and disbelief. The numbers defy imagination: trillions of gallons of water released in hours, reshaping continents faster than any human force ever could. But perhaps the most haunting aspect of these discoveries is not the floods themselves, but what they suggest about the nature of time. If cataclysms like these have happened before, might they happen again? Carlson and others propose that the end of the Ice Age was not a peaceful melting, but a violent transition triggered by external energy, possibly a comet impact or solar outburst that destabilized the planet's climate and ice caps. Such events, they argue, could explain both the sudden floods and the rapid climate shifts recorded in geological cores. The idea challenges everything modern science once believed about gradual change. It suggests that Earth doesn't evolve in a smooth curve. It lurches forward in convulsions. Even today, the remnants of that chaos remain hidden under layers of sediment and ice. And as researchers continue to uncover more evidence of abrupt global floods, one unsettling question keeps returning: was the last cataclysm the end, or merely the latest in a recurring cycle? For if the Earth has erased civilizations before, what's to stop it from doing so again? The Antarctic anomaly seen by Himawari 9 hinted that forces we don't understand might still stir beneath the surface. Deep, energetic, unpredictable. The megafloods of the past proved that those forces can and do transform the world in an instant. Together, they form a pattern, a rhythm of destruction and renewal woven through the planet's history. And if that rhythm continues, we may not be witnessing isolated mysteries at all. We may be watching the slow build-up to the next global reset. Because if there's one lesson written in the stone scars of Siberia and the shattered valleys of Montana, it's this: the Earth remembers. It may be quiet for a time, but its silence is never permanent. The Adam and Eve story, the classified truth about Earth's resets. If the planet has unleashed floods powerful enough to erase entire continents, the question becomes why? Why does the Earth seem to purge itself? Suddenly, violently, in cycles. What could cause oceans to rise overnight or continents to twist and drown? For most of human history, these were the questions of myth. But in 1966, one man tried to answer them, and his answer was so disturbing that it was classified by the CIA. His name was Dr. Chan Thomas, an electrical engineer, scientist, and some said a visionary. He wasn't a fringe theorist or a mystic. He worked for major aerospace companies like Bell Aircraft and Douglas Aircraft Corporation, designing missile guidance systems and working on advanced research projects during the Cold War. But beneath his technical expertise lay an obsession. The idea that Earth's disasters weren't random, that there was a hidden mechanism, a periodic reset, that wiped civilization clean every few thousand years. Thomas compiled his research into a book called The Adam and Eve Story. In it, he described a terrifying theory, one that, if true, would rewrite everything we thought we knew about geology, history, and humanity's future. According to Thomas, every 500 years, the Earth experiences a cataclysmic pole shift, a sudden displacement of the planet's crust over its molten interior. In an instant, continents change position, oceans rush across land, the poles move, and civilizations, no matter how advanced, are swept away like dust. To understand how shocking this idea was, imagine what Thomas proposed in physical terms. He suggested that the outer shell of the Earth, the crust, could slip and rotate over the planet's core, much like the skin of an orange sliding around its fruit. This wouldn't take millennia. It would happen in hours. As the crust moved, entire regions would shift thousands of miles. The South Pole might move to the equator. The Sahara could become a jungle. The Pacific Ocean could flood North America. Cities would vanish under waves 2 miles high, and within days, a new geography and a new history would begin. Thomas claimed that this process was cyclical, not random, triggered, perhaps, by imbalances in the Earth's magnetic field or by external cosmic forces. Solar flares, gravitational anomalies, even alignments of celestial bodies. Each cycle, he wrote, ended civilizations and began others, leaving only ruins, myths, and scattered survivors to start again. At first glance, the Adam and Eve story reads like apocalyptic fiction. But Thomas supported his claims with ancient records, geological data, and magnetic evidence that he said pointed to repeated, sudden planetary shifts. He referenced global flood legends, polar fossils in tropical zones, and ice cores that showed rapid temperature swings, not gradual changes, but near-instant flips. He also cited scientists before him, most notably Charles Hapgood, the mid-century geographer whose theory of crustal displacement caught the attention of none other than Albert Einstein. Einstein had written a foreword to Hapgood's book, The Earth's Shifting Crust, acknowledging that while the theory was unproven, it was plausible. Even Einstein admitted the Earth's balance could be disrupted if enough ice accumulated at the poles, causing a redistribution of mass and possibly triggering a shift. Thomas went further. He claimed that magnetic reversals and crustal displacement were not just theoretical possibilities. They were inevitable, recurring, and due again soon. Then, something strange happened. Shortly after its publication, Thomas's book was classified by the CIA. Copies vanished from libraries and bookstores. The book was pulled from circulation. For decades, it disappeared, its very existence a rumor among researchers of suppressed science. Only much later, after declassification efforts, did fragments resurface. The version released to the public was heavily redacted, just 57 pages, many blacked out or missing entirely. No one knows what the original contained in full. The CIA has never explained why the document was classified at all. Officially, there was no security risk. Unofficially, some believe that the implications of Thomas's theory, the idea that civilization faces periodic annihilation, were deemed too destabilizing for public knowledge during the Cold War. Others think there may have been more, that Thomas's connections to aerospace research and government projects might have linked his findings to classified data. Geomagnetic monitoring